Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of World War II's most stunning moments of betrayal, Operation Barbarossa, Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union. The big question we're tackling is, how could Joseph Stalin, one of history's most paranoid and ruthless leaders, have been so completely blindsided by this attack? It seems almost unbelievable, but when you dig into the details, a complex picture emerges. It's a story of ideology, miscalculation, and a shocking level of misplaced trust. Let's set the stage. In August 1939, the world was stunned when Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, two ideological archenemies, signed a non-aggression pact. This was the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. On the surface, it was a promise not to attack each other, but secretly it included a protocol to carve up Poland and other parts of Eastern Europe between them. For Stalin, this pact was a brilliant strategic move, or so he thought. It bought him time. He knew a war with Germany was likely inevitable, but he believed it was years away. He needed that time to continue modernizing the Red Army, which had been decimated by his own purges in the late 1930s, where he had executed thousands of his most experienced officers. The pact also gave him a buffer zone, pushing the Soviet border westward. From his perspective, he had outmaneuvered the Western powers and secured his western flank, all while gaining territory. Stalin's belief that he had time was central to his thinking. He was a committed Marxist-Leninist, and this ideology shaped his entire worldview. According to his doctrine, the great conflict would be between the capitalist nations themselves, like Germany, Britain, and France. He expected them to exhaust each other in a long, drawn-out war. Just like in World War I, the Soviet Union could then emerge as the dominant power in Europe when the capitalists were weakened. So when Germany invaded France in 1940 and defeated it with shocking speed, it didn't fit Stalin's ideological script. Still, he rationalized it. He believed Hitler would now have to deal with Britain, a long and difficult task involving a cross-channel invasion. Surely, Hitler wouldn't be foolish enough to open a second front by attacking the vast Soviet Union, while still at war with the British Empire. It was, in Stalin's mind, strategic suicide. Any suggestion that Hitler might do just that was dismissed as an illogical fantasy. This brings us to the mountain of intelligence warnings that Stalin received and incredibly ignored. By the spring of 1941, the evidence of an impending German invasion was overwhelming. Soviet spies, like the legendary Richard Sorge in Tokyo, provided detailed information, including the planned invasion date and the number of German divisions being massed on the border. British intelligence, passed on by Winston Churchill himself, confirmed these reports. German deserters crossed the border with stories of an imminent attack. Soviet border guards reported a massive, unprecedented buildup of German troops, tanks, and aircraft right across the frontier. The reconnaissance flights of the German Luftwaffe over Soviet territory became more and more brazen. So why did Stalin dismiss all of it? This is where his psychology comes into play. Stalin was notoriously suspicious, but his paranoia was selective. He trusted almost no one, yet he seemed to have a peculiar blind spot when it came to Hitler. He saw Hitler as a fellow pragmatist, a rational actor who, like himself, would not make a move that was so clearly against his own self-interest. He interpreted the German troop buildup as a form of political blackmail, a way for Hitler to pressure the Soviet Union into making more economic concessions. Germany depended heavily on Soviet resources like oil and grain to fuel its war machine. Stalin thought Hitler was just trying to squeeze him for a better deal. He believed that any provocation from the Soviet side, like fully mobilizing the army, could give Hitler the excuse he was looking for to start a conflict. Therefore, he viewed the intelligence warnings not as evidence of a genuine threat, but as disinformation. He was convinced that the British were trying to trick him. In his mind, Churchill was desperate to bring the USSR into the war to relieve the pressure on Britain. So any warnings coming from London were seen as a ploy to drag him into the capitalist conflict he so desperately wanted to avoid. He famously wrote on one intelligence report warning of the invasion, You can send your source to his explicit mother. This is not a source, but a disinformant. He was so locked into his own theory that he interpreted every piece of contradictory evidence as part of a complex British plot. He couldn't see the simple, brutal truth right in front of him. His own intelligence chiefs, terrified of contradicting him, began to soften their reports, telling him what they knew he wanted to hear, which only reinforced his fatal delusion. Then came the dawn of June 22nd, 1941, when the first reports of the massive, three-pronged German assault came flooding into the Kremlin. Stalin was in a state of disbelief. His initial reaction was that this must be an unauthorized provocation by rogue German generals. He ordered his troops not to fire back, still clinging to the hope that this was all a terrible misunderstanding that could be resolved diplomatically. He simply could not accept that Hitler had personally betrayed him and had launched the largest land invasion in human history. It took him hours, precious hours, to grasp the reality of the situation. The man who had built his power on predicting and eliminating threats had failed to see the greatest threat of all. When the full scale of the disaster became clear, Stalin reportedly had a breakdown. He retreated to his dacha outside Moscow for several days, leaving the country leaderless at its most critical hour. He expected his colleagues from the Politburo to come and arrest him for his catastrophic failure. When they arrived instead to ask him to lead the war effort, he was genuinely surprised. From that moment on, a different Stalin emerged, the wartime leader who would eventually rally the nation. But his initial miscalculation had a devastating cost. The Red Army was caught completely unprepared. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were encircled and captured in the opening weeks. The Soviet Air Force was largely destroyed on the ground. It was a blunder of epic proportions, one that almost cost the Soviet Union its existence and led to tens of millions of deaths. In the end, the story of why Stalin didn't expect the invasion is a powerful lesson in how ideology, personality, and ego can blind even the most powerful leaders to reality. Stalin wasn't stupid, he was intellectually trapped by his own rigid worldview. He saw Hitler not as the fanatical ideologue that he was, but as a mirror image of himself, a cynical, calculating strategist. He believed he was playing a game of chess, when in reality, Hitler had simply decided to smash the board. It's a chilling reminder that in history, the most logical move isn't always the one that gets made, and underestimating your opponent's capacity for irrational, ideologically driven action can lead to absolute catastrophe. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think was the biggest factor in Stalin's miscalculation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this deep dive interesting, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more historical analysis. We'll see you in the next one.